So welcome and good morning. I think I've met many of you before, but if not, let me introduce myself. My name is Mark Taylor, and I'm privileged to say I'm the Dean of WashU Olin Business School. And I want to thank you for attending this morning. We're absolutely delighted that you could join us for this exciting leadership perspective, which offers probably the best value in these kinds of events, right? We've got 6 executives, 60 ideas in 60 minutes. Let me give you a bit of a shout out for the school before we do start. Olin Business School is currently at an exciting time with our programs and faculty receiving a number of accolades. We launched our newly designed global MBA program this summer, which spans 3 continents and is based on values-based, data-driven decision-making. And our inaugural class of students is almost exactly 50% female, the most balanced MBA class in the country, and 23% underrepresented minorities. And we're extremely proud of those percentages. Diversity is one of Olin's core values, and we're gratified to have so many different voices here at Olin. We're also honoured this year that this same full-time MBA program was named Program of the Year, MBA Program of the Year, by Poets and Quants. And in fact, we're participating in an exclusive live stream with Poets and Quants Editor-in-Chief John Byrne next month. Please watch your inbox for an invitation and details of that event. There are more to come. Earlier this is the fresh news, that's 2019 news, the 2020 news. So earlier this week, the Financial Times published its annual global ranking of the world's best MBA programs. And if you haven't seen it, I'm delighted to say that the school jumped up 10 places to be placed firmly in the global top 50. In fact, our MBA program has gone up a total of 36 places in that ranking since 2016, now ranked higher than ever before. So, that's it. Thank you. And it's really gratifying to see many of the strategic initiatives we put in place over the past couple of years, which the new MBA program is just one, coming to fruition and making an impact. And I'm certainly grateful for your continuing support of the school, which makes that possible. Okay, so let's get started with today's program. I'd like to start by making a few introductions to some of our key staff over here today. I can see them on the grassy knoll over there. As I say your name, could you please wave to the audience so we can see you? First, we have Dorothy Kittner from WashU Olin's Corporate Relations and Business Development Office. And if you or any of your company would like to find out more about meeting our students or partnering with us, please have a word with Dorothy. Next, we have Kerry Donnelly and Sarah Hartman, both from our Graduate Programs Office. Please find Kerry or Sarah if you have questions or would like to learn more about graduate degree programs here at Olin. Michelle Ralston, Associate Director for Open Enrollment from Olin's Executive Development area, is also here. And if you're interested in more information about our 1- and 2-day courses or certificate programs, please see Michelle. And finally, if your organisation is interested in discovering ways to engage with WashU Olin, please introduce yourself to Sean Martin from Olin's Alumni and Development Team, and he'll be happy to chat with you at the end of our programme. Now, on to the main business. I'd like to introduce you to our guests today. So with us this morning, we have 6 accomplished leaders and executives, 4 of whom I'm delighted to say are Olin alumni. So we have from your left to right, Shannon Bagley, an EMBA alum, who is Senior Vice President of Human Resources at Centene. Hilary Anger Elfenbein, my distinguished colleague, the John K. Wallace Jr. and Alan A. Wallace Distinguished Professor of Organizational Behavior here at WashU Olin Business School. Eric Green, another EMBA alum, who is the CEO of West Pharmaceutical Services. Vanessa Kurai, another EMBA alum, who is a principal at Edward Jones. And then Samantha Rudolph, the co-founder and CEO of Babyation. And finally, Miranda Stokes, an MBA alum from WashU, who is Managing Director of Corporate Banking of Fifth Third Bank. So today's event, as you are well aware, I'm sure, provides each panelist 10 minutes to share 10 ideas they found useful in their careers. And I think we're ready to get started. So we're going to begin this lightning round style event, and I'll turn things over to Shannon.
Well, thank you, and good morning. I'm really honored to be here today to sit and just spend some time with our panelists and the audience. Just a quick overview of Centene Corporation. Centene Corporation is a global multi-line healthcare enterprise. Today, we serve nearly 1 in 15 individuals across the nation in health insurance. We focus primarily on the underinsured and the uninsured. We serve over about 24 million individuals and have a workforce of about 70,000 really across the world. My role within the organization, I've been with the organization since about 2003. I was a CPA by trade, spent a lot of time with Arthur Andersen and KPMG, joined the organization, and then really took on a lot of different roles throughout my time at the company. I served not only as kind of an individual controller for one of our health plans, I then moved in to lead internal audit and enterprise risk management, took a role as the CEO of one of our subsidiaries, had a chance to do some integration management office work, and today I'm serving as a senior vice president of human resources. I only kind of talk a little bit about that background because in those roles, I have learned so much from so many different individuals around me. And so as I go through my 10, I'll just kind of touch on some of those as we go. Alrighty. So I bucketed my 5 or my 10 top things that I've really gleaned over the last 20 years or so into 5 different areas. And I'll start with the first one around simplicity. As my days working with our board of directors in my internal audit and enterprise risk management days, I really started to learn that less is more and to always keep it simple. And what I mean by that, our CEO would always say, Shannon, it's much more difficult to write a 1-pager than it is to write a 30-page report. And what he meant by that is so many times you would walk into a boardroom or you would walk into any different kind of audiences and you'd read this 30 or 40-page document, you'd set it down, and you forgot what it even said. And so from that day, I really tried very, very hard early in my career. At the end of the day, whether it's a talk, whether it's a presentation, whether you're providing a report to others, what do you really want them to remember? What are the 1 or 2 things that when they leave the room, when they set your report down, regardless of how long or how short it is, what do you want them to remember? And so that's why I would say, just sometimes less is more, and to always keep it simple. You lead from where you are. And so when I use the word leader, I'm not talking about it from a title perspective. I talk about it from, as an individual, you have so many opportunities to lead. And as a part of that leadership, if you want people to follow, to me, I feel like it's important to just keep it simple. Don't get distracted by the white noise. Stay focused on the things that really matter. And so that would be my first kind of 2, I would say, in my top 10. The second one is about risk-taking. And I always, I guess I would say 2 of these, and I'll read through them. One is don't be afraid of the gray. So many times I talk to individuals and they're focused on, well, where exactly is this going to take me? What exactly is my title? What will be involved? And they're so focused on the details that they forget about the greater opportunity. And to me, that really leads into the second point of lean into opportunities, even if you don't know exactly how it's going to end. Don't be afraid of risk-taking and don't be afraid of the gray. So many things in my life have come because someone approached me and said, have you thought about this? And in fact, I hadn't really thought about that. And I didn't know exactly where that was going to take me. But what I did know is that if I leaned into it, I would be forever grateful for whatever I learned. The good, the bad, the ugly, the frustrations, the opportunities, the failures, the successes. But if you don't take the opportunity, if you don't lean into those, then you don't know what could have been. And so what I say here is, and really probably an example in my career is when I was probably 33 or 34, and I was asked to be the CEO of a health plan, a startup health plan in Missouri with the organization. And it was about a $200 or $250 million organization. We were serving about 50,000 individuals and their families, and we had a workforce of about 300 to 400. And I thought, gosh, well, this is what I'm going to learn. I'm going to learn these 3 or 4 things in this new stretch opportunity. And about a year in, I took a step back and looked at it and said, my gosh, I learned so much that I had no idea that I even needed to learn. And from that moment on, I thought if I wouldn't have taken that opportunity, I would not have learned so much about leadership. I learned a tremendous amount from taking an opportunity that I wasn't sure if I could do it. And certainly, I had planned on learning different things that I, in fact, learned so much more of areas that I just had no idea I needed to learn, if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense, but okay, we'll keep going. The second one is about listening, or the third one is about listening. And in all honesty, I'm not overly good at this, but I'll walk through these 4 areas that I think all tie to listening, even when what you're hearing is not comfortable for you. One is that feedback is truly a gift. I'm not a big fan of this all the time. There are times when I'll hear something and I may not agree with it, but before I react, I absorb it, I truly absorb it, and then I always try to figure out how to address it. Because the second thing is always real for me as well, and that the customer's perception is your reality. What I mean by that is, if someone believes it, if they think it, you've got to understand and really realize, how do I adjust whatever it is that I'm doing that might be causing that perception, even if it's not intended to be that way. And so I'd say feedback is a gift, take it in, and that the perception of your customer's perception is in fact your reality. The last 2, I think, also kind of go around this listening, is that you've got to truly listen and empathize with those around you. Listen to what they say. Try to understand why they're saying it. And then how can you, whether that is an adjustment in how you operate, an adjustment in how you lead, an adjustment in how you communicate, really understanding what that individual is saying and listening to what they're saying. Not just getting confrontational or not just shutting it down and saying, oh, I don't believe that, you're saying that because of this. But actually genuinely listening. I think it can really shape how you lead multiple individuals, multiple audiences, multiple customers. And the last one is one around change management. And that, we talk about change management, but what exactly is change management? And I would say it starts at the very front. You've got to ensure that you've got strong change management if you want to enable change or adoption of that change. So a couple of things here. I say that nothing is worse than delivering a solution that your customer never really wanted. And I don't mean customer always in terms of like a retail customer. I might mean customer in terms of your employees, your colleagues, your teammates, your family, your board, whatever role you're in. Nothing is worse than delivering something that you think they want, but they never wanted because you never asked, because you didn't truly listen to what they needed. And then what might even be worse is delivering something beautiful, but because you weren't thinking about the change management side, nobody adopts whatever behavior change or whatever new process or whatever new solution it is that you delivered. People will not just adopt something because it's the greatest new product. You've got to engage your customer, your family, your colleagues to truly adopt whatever it is that you're trying to change. Okay, 4th one. I think this one's about courage. I think it's about courage, and I think it's about influence. I heard very early on in my career, you don't manage people into battle. You lead them. You lead people. And what I mean by that is, or a couple of examples, is help paint a picture of where you want them to go. Don't just tell them what, or if you're leading a team or you're leading your colleagues or you're driving change in your family or whatever that situation looks like. If you want them to follow, paint a picture of somewhere they want to go. And I would say also ensure that you're focusing on the why. Why does it matter? Why does it matter to them? And I think if you can engage in storytelling, if you can capture an audience and say, this is where we can go, this is what we can deliver, and they can see it and they can touch it. I think you have a true ability to influence and lead individuals, teams, or mass workforces to where you ultimately want them to go, and they understand the why. And I'll end on one last comment. Hopefully I'm doing okay on time. One is around just being you. And I'll read this one because I feel like it's so important. Be humble. Surround yourself with incredible people. Don't be afraid of those that are much more knowledgeable, much stronger than you are. So many people, I think, are afraid of that. And in fact, when you surround yourself with incredible diversity of thought, incredible talent, you can drive and unleash innovation like never before. You don't always have all the right ideas. In fact, most of the time you don't have the right ideas. But if you can surround yourself with incredible people, if you can remain humble and always continue to grow, I think you can unleash innovation and performance in a way that is game-changing. Last thing I would say is don't be afraid to lead and be your authentic self. So many people in my career early on would say, and I'll end really quick, but this is what you should be doing, or this is how you should lead, or this is how you should communicate. And at the end of the day, take it all in, absorb the heck out of it, but be yourself. Be your authentic self, because that's a part of leading folks as well. There's no perfect picture. There's no perfect characteristics of what it means to be an incredible leader. And it took me a while to figure that out, probably 10 plus 15 years into my career, to allow myself to just be your authentic self. And I think that will help ensure it provides trust, it provides engagement, and it allows everyone, those around you, to be themselves as well. And I think that truly does unleash innovation, like I said, in a way that's game-changing. Okay, all righty.
Thank you so much for being here this morning. So I teach negotiations here at Olin in the MBA program, the professional MBA program, and the executive MBA programs. And so I'd like to focus my comments this morning about that topic. The most accepted scholarly definition of negotiation is a mutual decision-making process to allocate scarce resources. And if you take seriously the expansive nature of that definition, we are negotiating constantly, not just for big ticket items like setting your salary or buying a car, but also day-to-day items at work, like who has to work over the weekend to finish a project, or who gets the most visible assignment on a team. There are also household negotiations, like where do we go for Thanksgiving, or who's emptying the dishwasher today. But in spite of the importance, people don't necessarily know where they stand in their negotiations. So we know literally what our deal terms are, but we don't know how well we could have done. And we don't know how well someone else would do if placed in the same situation. So in my research, we've asked new car buyers how they think their outcomes stack up compared to the outcomes of other customers. And we find that their answers have nothing to do with the actual numbers provided by the dealership. So if people don't know how they did in a negotiation, what do they know? They know how they feel, and how they feel matters. So in a study we did with full-time MBA students who were graduating and negotiating their new job offer, we asked them how they felt coming out of the interaction. And then a year later, we asked them again about those feelings, and they remembered them with high fidelity. And those feelings predicted their job satisfaction a whole year later. Whereas interestingly, the actual outcomes, the dollars that they made in that negotiation, didn't predict anything. So then we took a closer look at those feelings they described, and we were interested in what kinds of topics they cared about. They were questions like, how did you feel about the outcome? Was it legitimate? How did you feel about yourself afterwards? Did you feel like you were treated fairly? How did you feel about the process? Did you feel like you had voice? Did you feel good about the relationship coming out of that interaction? And these all basically boil down to respect. And it doesn't cost anything extra to treat people with respect. These feelings matter because they change your behavior. And they change whether people choose to negotiate at all. And most people don't enjoy it. In fact, in a study of life activities, people rated negotiation lower than going to the dentist. And in case it ever feels like pulling teeth, you should know that for the average person, it's even worse. So you should think about the baggage you're carrying around with you and how it's affecting you now. Because a lot of our beliefs are self-fulfilling. So there was a study where randomly selected half of the participants were told that the survey that they just took suggested that they would be excellent negotiators. Those people outperformed the randomly selected half of the people who were told nothing about the survey they had just taken. And that suggests that simply believing that an interaction is going to be positive or negative has a way of making it so. There are a lot of people carrying around so much baggage about negotiation that they avoid opportunities to negotiate at all. And it's because they're scared of the other party saying no. And the problem, though, is that if they don't take a chance, they never have the opportunity to be proven wrong. If this is the case for you, my best advice is to treat negotiating like a muscle that you need to exercise. And if you want, you can start really small. So you can go to a restaurant, and no matter what seat they show you, ask for something else. And offer no explanation whatsoever. Eventually, if you build up from there, somebody's going to say no to you. And the important thing is to realize that when that happens, the whole world doesn't crumble into pieces. And if you can learn to live with that, then you can start to be braver in your negotiations. Because if you're so scared of no, then you don't have the opportunity to start getting to yes. But a lot of people worry that their personality holds them back, that they're not forceful or they're too shy and they can't get great negotiation outcomes. But the important thing to remember is that every personality type can succeed in negotiations. This is what the studies show. It's not so much about who you are as it is about what you do. And so if you do your research and you're prepared, then you go into a negotiation no matter how much of a jellyfish you might think you are. You cannot be taken advantage of because you know what your alternatives are and you know what is considered the norm in that setting. And when people think they aren't firm enough, they're often in a bind. And this bind can be described with a classic framework from social psychology. In fact, the framework I'm about to show you is so powerful that psychologists who forget to read each other's work accidentally rediscover it. Every 15 to 20 years, someone comes out and says, I have discovered a fundamental truth of human psychology. So let me tell you about this framework. The idea is that all moments in an interpersonal interaction can be described in a two-dimensional space that creates a 2x2. And the two axes are from warm to cold, and the other axis is from submissive to dominant. And the idea is that in a negotiation, you want to be in the upper right quadrant, that is warm and dominant. You want to have a firm handshake, but a friendly smile. And the problem is that people who fear negotiations often imagine that these two axes are really one. But theoretically, they are distinct, and all four cells of the 2x2 are populated. But sometimes, and let me say especially women are known for doing this, people think that in order to get their needs met, they're going to be considered cold and unfriendly. And that is the lower right quadrant of the 2x2, the dominant and cold. And you might call this the B word quadrant. People are worried that if they want their needs to be met, they're going to be seen as a problem. And so they think that in order to preserve relationships, that they need to be submissive and give up on their needs. And that's the upper left quadrant of this 2x2. Let me say that this concern isn't all in our heads. The threat of backlash is real, but just because it isn't entirely in our heads doesn't mean that we can't play tricks with our heads to get around it. And so in particular, people who fall into this trap, are more comfortable when they think about themselves as negotiating on behalf of somebody else. This has been called the mama bear instinct. So the idea is that a bear looks so cute and cuddly from far away, but if you get between that bear and her cubs, you will see how cute and cuddly she is not. And the idea is that this gets you out of the B-word cell because you are working hard to advocate for people you care about. And by definition, that makes you warm. And in almost any negotiation, you can think about people who have a stake. People who have a stake in your financial security, maybe your friends, or rather maybe your friends, your family, your parents, your children, anybody who has a stake in your financial security. Then there are the people on your team, the people in your company who have a stake in you getting an excellent negotiation outcome. And so they care about what you bring back. And if you ever hesitate, if you ever feel like you are worried about advocating for your needs, don't think of them as your own needs. Think about them as the needs of the other people who have a stake in your outcome. This especially works for people who think of themselves as pleasers. And a lot of us do, right? We want to please everyone around us. Well, you have the ability to think about whom do you want to please? And you can please the people who are on your side of the table rather than trying to please the people who are on the other side of the table. And the people who are close to you, who care about you getting effective outcomes, are the ones you should try to please. Well, those are my 10 ideas, and thank you so much for listening.
I'm going to stand if that's okay. Fantastic. I'm enjoying this already. First of all, I want to say that I'm pleased to be back here at Olin. It's been a number of years, and this facility is fantastic. So congratulations. And it's really exciting to be part of this panel, and I look forward to the other conversations. My background, real quick, I was 21 years with a company called Sigma Aldrich, based here in St. Louis for a number of years. Since 2015, I've been living in Philadelphia, running a really great company called West Pharmaceutical Services. If I took a poll, I probably wouldn't see many hands. It's about a $2 billion company, approaching an enterprise value about 12. We got 8,000 fantastic colleagues around the world. And what we do is we develop and design components used for primary containment and delivery devices for injectable medicines. So in fact, in the more developed markets, 7 out of every 10 injection is using a component coming from West Pharmaceutical Services. So there's a little known fact that you can take with you. But when I was asked about the 10 thoughts about leadership, and it's actually, first of all, humbling to be asked to come here today because there are so many great leaders in business, and what I was trying to think about are what has really carried me through my journey through my 25, 26 years so far. And I think you're going to hear some common threads amongst the panel here today. So the first I'd like to start with observation that came to mind, and we think about successful leaders. They're very clear and passionate about the company's purpose and impact. So as a leader and as a CEO, there's no greater responsibility to really articulate and clearly show the company's purpose to each of your colleagues, whether it's one individual or 8,000 or 100,000 employees, what impact they are having on society, what impact they are having on one another, what impact they're having in the communities where they live, work, and I call it into play, and also, frankly, the public company, also what impact you are having with your shareholders. Earlier this week, I had the opportunity to, one thing, if you knew me, you'll realize I do not like to sit behind a desk, hence the standing here. And I had an opportunity to visit 3 of our sites, Monday and Tuesday, in North Carolina, Florida, and Nebraska. And what constant reminds me is the purpose at West. Even though that we're producing about 43 billion components a year, which translates to about 110 million injections a day, when you have that type of velocity and volume going through your plants, your colleagues that are producing these products need to be reminded, and they do, it's in their DNA, that each and every component has a patient name on it. Think about that. When you have a purpose as an organization, the clarity, the energy, the passion that is associated with that to really drive performance, not just for the financials, but performance for the patient, the safety, the effectiveness of that drug molecule going into that patient, and also for one another in our communities and also as employees. So I want to share with you, that's my first. The second observation that came to mind in a successful organization is resilient, and as being a leader, the resiliency of just charging through. You know, it's important to have a strong team behind you, and I think it was mentioned earlier around surrounding yourself with the best, and I absolutely believe that. Each and every one of my executives are smarter, brighter, more capable in their domain than I'll ever be. But collectively, we're very powerful. And it's looking at how, as a team, how you can cope with change, like economic downturns or headwinds, new competitions, supply chain interruptions, i.e. what's going on in China today, and frankly around the world with the virus, and also regulation changes. But most importantly, when you embrace the changes and you think about the external pressures, you need to find ways to move forward and don't get stuck. Is that resiliency, its ability to prepare, respond, and to adapt to sudden disruptions and make the difference. In my opinion, this makes the difference between a good company and a great, performing, sustainable organization. So here are 8 more leadership philosophies for you to ponder on. The third one is authentic leadership. You know, I really recommend the book True North, Discover Your Authentic Leadership, and I suspect many of you have read this, by Bill George with Peter Sins. And I have had the chance to meet with Bill. He's the ex-CEO of Medtronic, a phenomenal leader, great success story, and he continues to pay it forward with his teachings and also through his book. And one quote I like to share with you that resonates with me, and I keep it on my desk: no one can be authentic and effective leader by trying to be someone other than themselves. It took me a while to learn this, especially through my career at Sigma Aldrich. I always was given new challenges, new opportunities at a very young age. Go run this company, go run this location, go overseas. And I never had really, I would honestly say, the CV or the experience, but there was something about the willingness and the passion to try something new. Before I went over to overseas one day, I take on a very large assignment. A leader and a mentor told me at that time, he looked at me and said, "Eric, just be you. Just be yourself. Be self-aware of your strengths and weaknesses without bias." So I try to live that each and every day, and it's a continuous journey of continuously look at ways to be authentic with every person I interact with on a daily basis. The fourth one is embrace agile mindset. I truly did not understand this until one of my colleagues joined the organization. He brought this agile methodology, and it's almost as things started flipping upside down, especially around the digital and IT world of businesses. And what it is as a leader, it's getting comfortable and working and living in an environment of constant change. And it's constant learning and improvement through continuously change, but I use the word with velocity. It's continuously allowing the organization to move forward, adapt with velocity, which nicely leads me to the next leadership essential attribute. The fifth one is intellectual curiosity. There's many people who take things face value, and there are leaders who want to learn more and be more engaged in the business. The questions such as, have you thought of, what do you think about, how would you consider? These are the type of questions when you're leading an organization or leading a discussion or being part of a discussion, is really constantly asking the question, I don't know the information, I need to seek the information so I can be part of the solution and part of the engagement. When you're in a complex business, the intellectual curiosity is very useful when you start thinking about ways to navigate through constant change, and also leverage it as a competitive advantage when you think about your competitors may not be moving as agile as you are. The sixth area is listen and actually hear. So there's 2 points to that. I'll give you a quick story. I have 3 beautiful daughters. They're in high school, middle school, and they're about to embark on a university setting. And I always, when I go home, I always would talk to them and say, how was school? And my oldest would say, Dad, you're listening, but you're not hearing me. And it's really true. She brings it back to me is that it's an innate ability, the ability to really listen and understand and ask the right questions. It is about the insights, and the data is fundamental to really think about a strong plan and insights on how to drive a business. And it's absolutely true what the experts say, the best communicators are the best listeners. And that's the one I work on each and every day, because it used to be learn to listen, but it's actually hearing is actually more important. The seventh one is being both risk-taking and reluctant. It's a balance there. And taking calculated risks, but being somewhat reluctant and vigilant. I call it the healthy dose of skepticism, and work hard, really work hard to try to see around the corners. That's not easy to do. As the competitive landscape changes, the markets change. But as teams, they're more capable of looking and seeing around the corners, allows them to be more effective to address and to minimize surprises. When the business is firing on all cylinders, sometimes you want to step back and say, oh, this is working. This is the time to start thinking about, how do I take that next step? How do we look at changing the dynamics of this business to think about the next act for the company? Because that high performance, continuously growing, continuously expanding margins, and continuously improving the profits, which result in an increase in your TSR, total shareholder return, it's all fine. But the reality is you have to find ways to continuously reinvent the business to stay ahead of the curve. This next one I want to share with you, I'm really passionate about, is crowdsourcing ideas from inside the company. I'll leave on this one here. Crowdsourcing is when you're go around your organization, find some of the best and the brightest talent you have in the organization, bring them together, take their titles and their responsibilities, leave them outside the door, and over a 3 to 5 year period, understand what is the best route forward with a new strategic plan. There's no better way to use your internal folks to better crowdsource, to inform your next strategy of the organization in the next direction. So I'm going to end on that because my time is up. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. I am so privileged to be here. I'm really excited. Oh, can you hear me properly? Oh, okay, all right then. Really excited to be here. And I'll start by just sharing a little bit about myself, because I feel like I'm a product of every experience I've had, every place I've been in. I was born in England. We moved to Nigeria when I was younger. My parents moved over to England in the first place because they wanted to further their education. And so they had all of us in London. We moved over to Nigeria, then we moved back to England. And after university, I worked for a great organization, the Halifax Bank of Scotland, for about 5 years before deciding that I needed a change. And then I got a place at Edward Jones, which is where I've been for almost 18 years. And I've been in the States for 10. I was very happy in England. I had no plans whatsoever to move to the US, as great a place as it was, and I'd visited several times. But I was very happy where I was, but there was an opportunity to move over to the States. And we've all heard about risk-taking and just leaning into opportunity, and that's exactly what I did. And so here I am, 10 years later, working with a great organization that truly believes that we can make a difference in clients' lives, helping them achieve their financial goals, leaving them better than we found them, and making sure that they can achieve everything that they set out to achieve financially. So I feel that my values very much align with the organization that I'm in. And of course, as you can see from the dates, I graduated on December the 13th, so I'm fresh off, thank you very much. And I've got my colleagues here. Graduation was a blast. The last 2 years have been fantastic. And of course, I feel more knowledgeable than I've ever been in my life because I went through a WashU MBA. But that's a snapshot of my experiences over the last 40 odd years of my life. And so I try to keep it really simple. As you can see, 10 bullet points, and I'm going to fly through them. And this is really sharing what I believe have helped me become a better person and a better leader. So know thyself and look after you. We've all heard already, some of our panelists have talked about authenticity. authenticity is so important. However, before we get there, I think it's really important to reflect on thyself. What are your triggers? What motivates you? How do you perform? What are your strengths? What are your development opportunities? Know those first, and then you know what your authentic self is. You know what you're bringing to the table. You know how to bring your best to the table. For some of us, if we don't have food, if we don't have enough rest, you're going to be a beast in the morning. So if you know that, make sure you get exercise, make sure you get rest. And talking with a lot of my peers and other leaders, across different organizations, we don't take enough time to reflect, to pause. I think you have to do that in order to lead others and lead others well. Secondly, apply good business strategy to your life. We've got some fantastic business theories that work really well in a business sense. And I would say that my encouragement to leaders all the time is apply some of those things in your own life. And I'll share an example that's maybe personal to me. I remember heading into my late 20s, into my 30s, thinking, hang on, it was a vision of mine to, at some point in my life, have a family. It was really important to me, but that was something that I was not going to leave to chance. So in business, what do? We have a vision, we think about what our objectives are, we have our strategies, we have our timeline, we have milestones. So what was I going to do? The exact same thing. So how do I ensure that I am doing something new? How do I put myself in a place where I can meet people who I could possibly even date? Because at my age, it wasn't going to happen randomly. So those are some of the things that I thought, well, I've done it well career-wise. Why wouldn't I apply it to myself personally? Done. There's certain things that you just can't leave to chance. I think you've got to apply that in your own life, which is what I did. And my encouragement, again, to business leaders, to people, use some of those theories and treat yourself like a business. Know and manage perception. I think Shannon specifically mentioned this. Perception is a reality. We know that. Perception is your brand. And just like in companies where our reputations are really important, I think for us as leaders, as individuals in companies, you have to treat yourself as a brand. So what's your brand? What do people say about you when you're not in the room? Is it true? If it isn't true, what are you going to do to change it? And how can you change it authentically? And my personal experience, and I say this to peers and associates alike, is start coaching people on what to say about you when you're not in a room. Give them the words. In my experience, I'm very different. Again, I've just shown you my background. There are not many London-born Nigerians living in St. Louis that are going to come around. So I'm going to show up differently. I sound differently as an example. And so I don't want my difference to be interpreted, say, as a lack of strategic thinking, or Vanessa doesn't show up strategically, or Vanessa doesn't drive results just because I do things differently. So I would say think about what your perception is and make sure you manage it. Treat it like a business plan. Embrace relationships and its currency. We've all heard it. People are hugely significant. Make sure we're connecting with people all the time. Spend time with people. I know when we've got a plan, you drive through those processes, you want to get this plan done, but having those genuine connections with people is really important at every single level. And at the same time, leveraging those connections. One of the best and most important things I got from my MBA was learning how to use your influence. I regard myself as someone who's got good relationships across the board, but I wouldn't have said prior to my MBA that I was political. Now I do, because I've learned how to use my influence in order to drive results forward. There is absolutely nothing wrong in saying to Eric, I know Eric is going to help me move this objective forward, giving Eric a call and saying, Eric, hey, I really need you to do me a favor. I'm not going to wait for a meeting to have that conversation. I'll phone Eric now, maybe ask for a favor, do it with grace, do it with authenticity, and move that business objective forward. So leverage the currency of good relationships. Be present. That goes without saying. For me, it's making sure that I'm making eye contact with people when I'm in a room with them, not messing around with my mobile phone, and just giving people the attention I believe that they deserve. That's respectful. I think in our age now, everyone is going with their phones. You're in a meeting, you're sending emails. Be present. And I've got 2 young boys, 4 and 6, and when I notice myself with my phone, I've just put it down, Vanessa, put it down, and give these people your attention. So I try to make that a guiding principle for my life. Be a student of your crafts. We all should have learning as an opportunity. You're never too old to learn. So for me, continuous learning is huge. And I try and learn from everyone. I try and keep abreast of what's going on in the world. As an example, I would subscribe to The Economist just so that I can understand those global trends. If I understand global trends, I'm able to be a better thought leader. I'm able to champion change, lead change, and help develop other people and prepare them for those new demands and new challenges that we can all expect in our different organizations. Be confident. Again, that goes without saying. And I know some people will roll their eyes and tell me, well, Vanessa, it's easy for you to say. I still have self-doubts, this so-called imposter syndrome. I think it's a lot more common than we think, but you're not going to see it here. This is never going to show fear, even if it's going on inside of me. So I'll just say, just be bloody minded about it and go for it, would be my advice. It doesn't matter how you feel. Do it afraid. That's basically the same thing. I should have wrapped them into one and just said the same thing. And create an environment for people to thrive. I sincerely believe in giving feedback. Give people candid feedback, but do it with respect. One of my leaders told me, Vanessa, if you ever have to deliver a difficult message, make sure you deliver the message, but make sure you leave those individuals with their dignity intact. And I think we can all do it. You can deliver a difficult message, create supporting structures so someone is not completely devastated by bad news, but we shouldn't couch bad news. And then my last one was be thankful. Enough said. I feel very, very grateful for every opportunity that I've been given, and my goal is to be able to create that for other people and to show gratitude in everything that I do. So thank you very much.
So this is how I get my steps, by pacing. So please indulge me as I move across this stage. So I'm Sam. I am the co-founder and CEO of Babyation. Unlike everybody else on this panel who have real jobs, I'm the founder of a venture-backed startup. Lest you think that I have no actual business advice to give, though, I did spend 9 years at ESPN. I was lucky enough to be the person that was there when they were evaluating new technologies and figuring out how to implement those new technologies with the content that they offered. So while this is not exciting now, at the time it was, I figured out how we implemented Twitter and Facebook, how we launched new apps, what was part of that content. That was kind of my role. So it was really exciting in that I had this opportunity to basically experience a startup, but I also had this great safety net of the Walt Disney Company, where I learned how to manage people, I learned how to adhere to P&Ls. It was really this kind of great duality. So while I was happily working in sports, I read this article in the New York Times that said, shouldn't the breast pump be as elegant as an iPhone and as quiet as a Prius by now? And for the record, I was not a mom. I am a mom now. I'm proud of that. I wear that badge with honor. But I was not at the time. And I kind of saw my future flash before my eyes, and I got incredibly angry. And so after thinking about it for a year, my husband and I decided to start Babyation. So we are making the world's smallest and quietest and lightest breast shields. That's kind of our shtick. I could be standing up here pumping and pacing and you would not know. I'm not. I am not. I could be though, and I'm really proud of that fact because we think moms should pump wherever is right for them. I will not talk anymore about breast pumps, I promise. So now that you kind of know a little bit about me, let's jump into my top 10. A couple of them have been covered, but I think that my spin might be a little bit different. Fair warning, the next slide has a curse word, or part of a curse word. So This quote from Hamilton really just kind of sticks with me. And I think that we all talked about resilience, and resilience is important. But just kind of understanding what we need to do to overcome a bad day or a bad outcome or having just a setback is really important. So for me, right, when you have a startup, there are a lot of bad days. There are a lot of amazing days, but it's kind of like a roller coaster. And so when I have one of those mostly rare bad days, I have a strategy. I pull up an email from one of the many moms that have reached out to us to tell us how their lives would be better if they had our product. And I read it, and sometimes I read too. And that kind of gets me what I need to pull myself together, get up off the proverbial mat, and keep fighting, because this is a product that moms need, this is a product that moms deserve, and it kind of, to Eric said, this is my mission, this is my purpose, this is what gets me going. And so I encourage everyone to find that strategy, whatever it is, so that you can kind of get up off that mat and keep going. No is a gift. So I pitch, investors all the time. I've raised millions of dollars, both from venture capitalists as well as from angel investors. I've been told no dozens, hundreds of times. Lots of no's, lots of yeses, but lots of no's. And I love the word no. I prefer yes. But no is just, it's so helpful. It's kind of like that book, He's Not That Into You. I would much rather know if there isn't a fit or if someone's not interested in what I'm doing, because that frees me, gets me out of the headspace of having to worry about it. I don't have to spend the time or the mental energy to figure out what's going on. And my time is really valuable. Your time is really valuable. Nobody wants to chase something that isn't there. So, I think that we're all a little bit afraid of the word no, right? Hilary talked about that too. No is a gift for both the people who hear it, and I would encourage all of you to say no to people when you're not interested. You're not going to hurt anyone's feelings. You are truly giving them a gift. So breast pumps, okay, I said it, I'm sorry. They are Class 2 medical devices. So we had to go through the FDA's 510K clearance process. And we chose to celebrate when we submitted to the FDA. We had undergone months of extensive testing, passed it all. We had, submitted literally a 1,000-page document to the FDA. We were pretty confident we were going to clear, but that's when we chose to celebrate. We didn't have a big celebration, but we acknowledged everything we had gotten to at that point. And I think that if you're always looking ahead, only looking ahead to the next big milestone, you're going to miss the really exciting things that you've done. And I don't think I did a great job of doing that at ESPN, and I try really hard to do that for me and for my team now. It really makes a difference. So we all talked about perception and reality. My kind of version of this was when I was 23, I became a manager at ESPN, and that was really young. And my entire team of like 10 people were older than I am, or I was, not surprising. And it was really kind of hard for me to communicate with them and for us to kind of buy in. And we've all heard that old adage of there's my version, your version, and the truth, which is kind of in the middle. And one of the most important things that I learned was that I had to get into their reality so that we could partner on ways to get better. It wasn't always about me being right, and I was really focused on kind of establishing my authority because I was young and a woman and whatever it happened to be. And being able to kind of break through that and realizing that it was about them and not about me made all the difference in the world. So Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx, she tells the story that for the entire first year that she was working on Spanx, she told nobody about her idea, because ideas are kind of ephemeral and they're nascent and they're really easy to squash, and she did not want anyone to talk her out of what she was doing. And who you surround yourself with, it really matters. I have people that I go to when I need unyielding support. I have people that I go to when I need a kick in the you-know-what. And I think knowing who to go to makes a difference. And so similarly, find your people. You not only have to find those people, but I found it absolutely crucial during my time in the corporate world as well as during my time in my startup to find people that you do not report to, that you do not have any sort of kind of expectation to, that you're basically peers with, who you can go when you need to have a minute. That minute can be crying in someone's office. That moment can be throwing something. That moment can be expressing your absolute, utmost fears or vulnerabilities. But I think being able to say it and acknowledge it and own it in a safe space with someone you trust is so important. I have that with other female founders. I had that with a colleague at ESPN. Even if something, hey, what is the tone like on this email? Do I need to worry about it? And I encourage all of you to find those people for you. Apparently I'm quoting things, so the hard is what makes it great from A League of Their Own. This is just kind of another version of push yourself, grow. I mean, you don't have to do everything hard. In a startup, almost everything is hard. So my kind of counterbalance is that I like to watch a lot of mindless television and read books that don't matter. So not everything has to be hard. But even if you're someone who likes structure and routine and kind of wants to know what's next as you put one foot in front of the other, I encourage you to find one thing to really step outside of your comfort zone with, and because that's where we see the most growth. And similarly, it's okay to course correct. So, I don't like the word fail. I don't really acknowledge the word fail. But at the same time, in startups, we use this phrase called fail fast. If it's not going to work, it's better to know and move on and pivot or move on to the next thing. And it was really liberating to me when I realized that my first job was not going to define the rest of my life. I advised a lot of people throughout their careers, and we only take so many jobs. Maybe it happens 10 times. But you can always undo it. It's not permanent. And so trying something and recognizing that it doesn't work is okay. And I think people often need permission to try something new. So you will have it. Confidence is really, it's key. I was blessed with an abundance of confidence. Thank you, Mom and Dad. I appreciate that very much. Probably the best gift they've ever given me. And one of the nicest compliments that I got from one of our investors, he asked how I met a person, and I said, well, I sent her a cold DM, and she responded. And he said, wow, you'll just ask anyone for anything. Yeah, I will. One, because it's my job. But two, I'm not afraid of the word no. I love the word no. I know my worth, and so what's the worst that happens? Someone doesn't respond, or someone tells me no? Well, that's, down here, but if I can get this, absolutely. So I'm very confident. I think we should all be confident. I think the duck underwater that Vanessa was saying, where you're calm up front and you're paddling underwater, is a really good thing. And then lastly, pay it forward. This is the most important thing we can do. I try hard to do it in every way I can, and that looks different for different people. So we can pay it forward with our networks. We can pay it forward with our time. In my world, we can pay it forward by investing in people. But paying it forward, that's how the world goes around, and that's really how we honor the people that have helped us to get to where we are today. So with that in mind, this is my email address. If I can be of assistance to you, please reach out to me. It would be a pleasure to pay it forward, and my only ask is that you then do the same. So just in case you forgot it, my email address is also on that slide. Thank you.
Do I advance? Good morning. This is humbling to go after these other panelists, and I was pretty sure that they were going to hit on a couple of my points, so you're getting 12 ideas from me. As a little bit of my background, since I left WashU back in 2002, I've pretty much spent my entire career in the evil industry of banking, which is actually a wonderful industry, and delivering corporate finance to large consumer and retail clients. This has given me the advantage both at my current firm, which is Fifth Third, and my previous firm, which was Bank of America Merrill Lynch, of seeing both huge organizations from the inside, but then also having the advantage of seeing a number of corporations as their banker. So I went a little more tactical with my ideas, but I think you'll see some thematic similarities with some of the points that have been raised already. So as I reflected on 20 years, here are my 12 tips for you. Let's see. The first 5. I'm in a client-facing role, and it took me a long time to realize that you don't only want to put your best foot forward with clients and at external meetings. And I see this as a fatal flaw that everybody falls into. Everyone's a client, whether you're working with partners internally or whether you're working with a client. The way that they see you and the content that you deliver should be consistent, regardless of who you're talking to, whether it's somebody incredibly senior, whether it's a peer, whether it's someone junior. You want to make sure that you're relatively consistent in what you're presenting out to all of these clients. Organizations are pretty contrived places, and I can't remember, I think multiple people have mentioned this, impressions are formed quickly, and unfortunately they're difficult to change. So you don't want to be less than prepared, whether it's internal or external. On that, also similar to forming a personal connection. Whenever you really want to advance something, whether it's a business objective, whether it's a conversation with a client, in person is always better than phone. Phone is always better than email, and email is your last resort. There's so much information coming at us constantly, and what I see a lot of people fall into is, ooh, I'm gonna write the most perfect email. It's gonna lay out all of my thoughts beautifully. They're gonna read it and they're immediately gonna do what I'm asking them to do. That never happens. Because myself, if an email, and I tell my junior resources this, if you write me an email that's more than 4 sentences, I'm probably not gonna read the whole thing. So just call me and talk through what you're trying to get to. And in person, even if you can only get 15 minutes on somebody's calendar, you're gonna have all of their attention most of the time, unless it's my sons who are looking at their phones. You're gonna have all their attention and they're not gonna be able to multitask. So take it, take the 15 minutes, take the 30 minutes, even though you might have to fly for it, even though it might seem short, you will get more accomplished than you would by phone or by email. And on that, really respect the time of clients, whether internal or external. Another trap that I see everyone fall into is, oh, I got the meeting, I'm gonna go and waste the first 15 minutes chewing the fat. That's fine if you really need to catch up and it's been set more as a social agenda, but I do see this trap that people fall into of, I need an hour, even though maybe you only have 30 minutes that you have to discuss. People are busy, they have a lot of things they have to do. Respect their time, define an agenda, make sure they know what you're gonna talk about, make sure that they agree with what you're going to talk about. This is a good one. Never respond in haste, whether in person, phone, or email. I've used this many times and it has 2 benefits. I've written that FU email. Don't put the recipient actually in the email. Write the email and then delete it. This has 2 benefits. You're able to get your emotional response to the situation out of your system, and actually it helps you crystallize your points and thoughts on the matter much more clearly so that when you do meet with that person and have to address whatever the subject matter is, you're more prepared to lay out your case in a very dispassionate way. This has saved me a number of times. So if you're quitting your job, don't do the burn the bridges on the way out the door. It'll come back to haunt you. It seems so basic, but I think that it's getting more and more challenging as whatever media you use proliferates. Be impeccable and timely with follow-up. You know, we all, especially in knowledge-based industries, count on other partners, clients, juniors, executives, et cetera, to help create whatever the deliverable is. If you are slow, you don't communicate your timeline when you'll be able to get back to them, it's incredibly frustrating for other people, and it goes along with the impression and the image of you as a coworker internally. So just make sure you're impeccable and timely with follow-up. Other reflections. So here's where you get the 7. If we can get them up. There we go. Somebody said something similar about this before, and actually I was a TA for the negotiations class when I was here, so were you? If you don't ask, you don't get. Now, be professional, have a good case for what you want, but don't be afraid or shy away from asking for what you really want. Now, this also goes along with don't negotiate or bargain from a false position. Be very clear about what you actually want and then make the case for whether it's the business or you personally, why you should get it. I see so many people, and you're right, that women fall into this trap more. They don't really ask for what they want, and they kind of try and weave around in a very passive-aggressive way, thinking that everybody will read their minds and give them what they want. This is another one. You know, no task is beneath you. Be willing to dig in. I see, especially for folks who come in to an organization from another bank or another firm, think that all of their past experience should mean that they shouldn't have to do certain tasks or really dig in. That's never the case. And honestly, it's a good example for internal partners when they see you're just as committed to getting to a resolution or a final product as they are. You can't waste your time, but you have to show that you're willing to do the work too. This is my pet peeve. Early is on time is late. Going along with the agenda, I can't tell you how many times I've been saved by planning in an extra half hour in advance, 15 minutes in advance to a meeting or getting somewhere, or even just an internal meeting where we got lost, the presentation was lost. The person I was meeting with was actually gonna have a meeting right after mine, and so they were like, oh, perfect, you're here, let's get in and get this going early. It sounds so basic, just don't be late, because that's, again, respecting people's time. I already mentioned that, never negotiate from a false position. I was a little hesitant to put this one on because I recognize you would immediately evaluate everything that I was wearing. But in this day and age, I see a lot of articles on it, and I'll say I've covered companies from Abercrombie & Fitch to Neiman Marcus. Looking professional, not comfortable, is very important. Now, professional can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different organizations, but one of the things I see, especially among students who are coming in from college or MBA school, is they think they can push the edge of the envelope and maybe be a little casual or comfortable with their attire. But this, again, goes back to the impression that you're making. You never really want what you're wearing to be what you're judged on. Those athleisure pants that you think look enough like a suit, they really don't look like a suit. So my recommendation that I give a lot of the new hires is look at what the people who have the jobs you want someday wear and how they dress and how they carry themselves, and within your budget, kind of emulate that, because then you take one variable off the table and you make a better impression, and then they just look at your content and your ideas and your delivery. This was a consistent theme also. Avoid stolen valor and let others shine. You know, it doesn't do any good if people take credit for the team's work just because they happen to lead the team. It's much better to let the people who came up with the ideas shine and get the credit, because then you end up having a stronger team. People are much more forthcoming with their ideas, and they'll feel a sense of trust in your leadership. I think this is my last one. Be assertive, but don't interrupt. And this goes back to the hearing. When I was younger and just starting out as a primary, I would often be formulating my response as the person was talking because I wanted to be able to get it out there right away. It's okay to do the pregnated pause to formulate your thoughts, because often you'll miss some of the points that they're making if you just jump in there too early. So those are my 12 tactics for you.
Just wait for the microphone before you ask the question. Do you want to point them out for us?
Excuse me? Oh, yeah, the questions? Sure. Right here. Down.
You left us hanging, man. You only gave us 9. I got to hurry your 10th.
I won't use 10 minutes. No, that's a good point. Trust and humility go hand in hand. I think there's a recent article about trust, and it's not just trust of a individual, but trust of a team, and that's very powerful. But I also think being a humble leader is how you gain that trust with your teams. I think the last one is think globally and appreciate diversity. I think many times we get trapped into the ecosystem that we're looking at the point in time. Push yourselves to think globally. Push yourselves to think about diversity. Diversity is about experiences, it's thought, it's presence, everything. And that makes the environment much more rich for success. So thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Yeah, just want to say a huge thank you to spend time with us this morning to help us be better. I'm curious about your comments, though, of how do we adapt some of your key learnings to a decentralized organization. So as we have people in different locations, different sites, we're not able to be face-to-face, how have you adapted your leadership style and your best suggestions to maybe a team that is 2 hours away or halfway around the world? Just curious on your thoughts.
I can start with that one. I've always worked in somewhat of a decentralized location. When I was with B of A, I was in Chicago. The preponderance of my team that I had to work with was in New York. I now live in Denver. the preponderance of my teams are elsewhere. I honestly will call people more often than I will email them, and I also travel a lot. So I still think getting in front of someone is the most important. Some people are a big fan of using video conferencing. I only am if I've done my hair. But I would say using humor and getting to know people over the phone is so much more valuable. And that's honestly the way I've gotten to know some people that I end up not meeting in person until a couple of years later. So whenever you can, reach out to them in person or over the phone.
You know, I would probably just add to really think about it in terms of scale. So like there will be times when a team of, let's say, 50 people want to be a part of some type of dialogue or a town hall. Why limit it to just those 50 that are there? And so this is where, you know, live video streaming is helpful, ensuring every opportunity, if you're going to engage with the workforce or your teams, that be present as much as possible, but take every single opportunity and think about it in terms of scale. You know, why just limit a talk to this room? Live stream it, video it, record it, put it on your intranet. Really take that time to maximize every interaction you have. You know, personal is very important, but you know, as workforces become more global, as you know, to me, I think it's take that time to be present, use every technology possible to be present, but I like to do everything that I can at scale, outside of kind of one-on-ones that are important to be very intimate. But I love, you know, every time you have a chance to touch an audience, touch that audience at scale.
Can I add one thing to that? I think it becomes even more important to build trust when your team is far away. So sometimes it means that we have to be uncomfortable or work a little bit harder. When I was in Bristol, which is where ESPN's headquartered, I ran a team out of LA, and they worked on the overnight sports center. And their very first night when they went live, I stayed up with them all night. And I think that from there, you know, really solidified us as a team. And I think they took me and our relationship much more seriously. That doesn't really scale. You can't do that with everybody all night long. But you know, but I do think if there are ways to, at least with your key people, establish trust, it goes a long way.
Good morning. Hello there, everyone. Monique Bynum here. So this question could be for anyone on the panel. So I work with in the nonprofit sector, so I work very closely with our board of directors and looking to implement a lot of change, but very resistant to those changes. What's the best way to implement and show the board that here are the steps that we're going to take? Is it really just showing up and showing them, or is it really connecting with those board members individually, seeing their perspective and really getting them to buy into the vision of where they're going? It's a small board of 18.
So great question. I can help with that. First of all, I think it's important to understand where they're coming from. So the latter piece that you added, which is asking questions, finding out where they are, is really important. And there's so many different frameworks that you can use when you're about to embark on change or transformation. So John Cotter's framework for change with the 7 steps, that's my preference. But I think it is starting to understand where they're coming from. So what's the hesitation? What's the resistance? Because when you understand that, then you can meet them exactly where they are, and then that's when you can start to really implement change and you know, help people through it. Because if you don't understand what the resistance is, then you're really never going to get people to come along. And at the same time, there's also the acknowledgement that there are some people, usually in the minority, that will never be part of that change. So what do? You know, do you coach them out, or do you just completely ignore them and work with the majority? So to me, that would be a starting point.
So we have one more right here. It's all the way down here. Oh, there. Yep, go ahead.
My question, I have a comment on the negotiation and then a question. So in negotiation, the thing that I'd really take to heart is a saying that goes like this. In this world, you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. The question that I have is that I didn't hear you mention the aspect of the long-term versus a short-term relationship in negotiation. So, for example, if I'm going to go buy a car, my attitude is going to be quite different than when I'm entering into a negotiation with a vendor, on their prices, or an employee, because to me that's a longer-term relationship, and I want them to view it as a fair deal. Whereas if I'm buying a car from a vendor, I see it as an end game. So my attitude is going to be different. So just wanted to know what your thoughts are on that.
Absolutely, and we talk about that a lot in the class. There's such a difference in, if you think about the feelings coming out of a negotiation and how much they matter in the long term. In some relationships, they don't matter in the long term, and that's something you want to factor into the situation that you're in. So I think a lot of it is about knowing your context, knowing what the other party wants, seeing the world through the other party's eyes, not to like them, but to be able to deliver to them what it will take for them to reach an agreement with you at the lowest cost to yourself. And a lot of times leaving value on the table for the sake of the relationship is the right thing to do. In fact, in a lot of working relationships and personal relationships, right, where to go for Thanksgiving, in a lot of relationships, you actually incorporate the other person's preferred outcome into your preferred outcome because you want what they want inherently. So I think that's a great point. Thank you for making it.
Good morning. First of all, I want to thank you all for sharing your philosophies and leadership advice. I know we all appreciate it. Just for the sake of time, I know Eric had mentioned a book. I was wondering if everyone else just could quickly call out just whatever is your most influential book, whether it's business or Dr. Seuss. Don't worry about the author. We have Google. But was just very curious if you guys had one book that just really kind of helped shape some of your ideas that we could possibly read and kind of get into your head and see how it influenced you.
You know, I'm a huge fan of just the Harvard Business Review. I know it's not a book, but I love reading kind of the entrepreneurial stories, the dialogue. There's so much focus on leading in times of uncertainty, of bringing digital dexterity to the forefront in how you lead. We talked about agility, and I guess I would say that I'm much more of a daily kind of news, as well as I really like the entrepreneurial spirit of the Harvard Business Review.
So related to the confidence issue that a number of the panelists brought up, I love this book. It's relatively recent, called The Confidence Code. Excellent book. And then I can't help, because we've been talking about negotiations, pointing out that especially for those women in the room, that there's a wonderful book called Women Don't Ask. And I can sum up the message of that book with the title, Women Don't Ask.
I gave you one of my best books, so yeah.
So mine would be The 7 Habits, Stephen Covey. Still one of the classics.
So I've already acknowledged I don't read real books. If I had to pick one, it would be Shoe Dog. I'm also, just in part because of my space and in part because I have a startup, I'm always interested in kind of what the unicorn, founders of startups are saying and talking about. So I like following people like Amy Nelson. She writes for, I think it's Inc. Online. I think she just has a really great perspective. She founded The Riveter, which is a co-working space. So I recommend her as well.
I do read, but I don't want to mention which books I read here. Probably the best advice I was given by an adjunct professor was read the Wall Street Journal as much as you can, and if you only have 10 minutes, read their op-ed page, because it gives you a very good sort of thoughtful view on a variety of topics that are of the week, of the month, et cetera.
Thank you all.
All right. Wow. I want to thank again all of our panelists for spending time with us and sharing us amazing insights to get 2020 off to a roaring start. I want to thank Shannon, Hilary, Eric, Vanessa, Sam, and Miranda, and I want us all to give them one more round of applause. So again, we hope you've enjoyed today's program, and if you want to get engaged with our faculty, students, learn more about our programs, get engaged as an alumni, don't forget to reach out to Sean. We have Sarah, Michelle, they're all still here, Carrie, and myself, Dorothy Kittner. This concludes our program. So we hope that we'll see you again on March 6th for She Suite, which will be another fantastic dialogue just like this one. And we hope you go out there and make it an awesome day. Thank you so much.